Hi, this is Pavel and I am here with another C++ exercise. This time we are going to be using so-called anonymous functions because the assignment says we are to write a program that uses a template such as that. There are functions called GetSmallestValue and GetLargestValue. These types should work with int, double, and string. Now we will ask the user to enter 5 integers and it should call GetSmallestValue and GetLargestValue. We will have each function return the smallest value in the array and the largest one. In other words, user enters 5 integers, we will place those integers into an array, then we will check which number was the smallest, which one was the largest, and we will return it and display. Now then we will ask the user to enter 5 double values, and we will do the same thing. We will get the smallest and the highest value from the doubles that the user entered. And lastly, we will ask the user to enter 5 strings and store them in an array of strings. And we will call the same functions, this is important, the same function, GetSmallestValue with the string array, and also call the same function GetLargestValue to get the largest and the smallest values of the strings that the user entered. In other words, we will have 2 functions, yet we will be passing integers into it, doubles into it, and also strings into it. Now, one way to do it would be using some abstract functions and then override them for each, for integer, for double, and for string. But that's not really the same function. You still have to type it 3 times. In this case, and since they want us to use a template, we will use the anonymous functions. If you don't know what it basically is a function that accepts almost any argument. Like if you send an integer to it, it will figure out it's an integer and it will treat it as an integer and process it as an integer. If you send a string to it, it will know that it's a string and process it as a string. So we will be using integers, doubles, and strings. Okay, so we know we will have 3 arrays. Well, before I go any further, I'm using Visual Studio. If you are using some other IDE, just delete this, include stdafx.h, that's specific for Visual Studio. And also Visual Studio creates _tmain with these arguments in it. If you have different IDE, basically just name it main, and in this case you don't even need any arguments. You can just delete this completely. Okay, so now we will be getting some inputs, so we will need some library, and the one we need is the IO string. And we will need, since we are also getting a string, we will need that. And I'm going to be using namespace std, so I don't have to type the std column double column. Anyway, so we will have 2 functions. And again, there will be anonymous functions, but we'll still need to do the prototypes. And if you remember, it says uses a template, and the template is a required syntax to describe or to define the anonymous function. So we will use the template. And then there's these less than and greater than, like a bracket, and in it we will type type name and capital T. And you can see that the T changes the color. This is basically the anonymous type. T stands for type in this case. And the function we will be using is GetSmallestValue, and it will return the value, the smallest value. But again, we will be passing integer, we will pass in double and string into it, and we will return integer, string, or double depending on what we passed in. So we are actually going to return an anonymous type. I'll call it T again, and it's gonna be get smallest value. That's the name of the function, and this is the return type, which again is anonymous because we don't know what we are going to return. And the function expects the array of integers, or the array of doubles, or the array of string, and we don't know which one is going to be passed into this function. So again, we are passing it anonymously, so you'll pass it as a generic type or anonymous type, and we are passing lowercase t. In this case, it's the name of the array that we will be passing into it. So this is the syntax for the anonymous function. We will have the template with the type name T for the type, and over here we have the return type. Again, it's anonymous, the name of the function, that's GetSmallestValue, and the parameters that it expects. It expects an array, and we don't know which one, so we'll make it anonymous. That's why the capital T. And the lowercase t is just the name of the array it shows. It could be anything. And the other one is gonna be the same thing, or very similar. It's gonna be type name, capital T, and the return type will be the same, except the name of the function will be different because we are getting the largest value, and we are passing an array, anonymous array, into it. And so these are our prototypes, and now we can go to our main and create the arrays for the integers, for the doubles, and for the strings that which will be used for the user input. So I'll just call it integers array. We need 5 elements. That's what the assignment calls for. So I'll just hard code it. Doubles. I just name it doubles. Again, 5 elements, and strings with 5 elements in it. So these are our variables, which are the arrays that will hold the user input. So now we will populate the arrays with user input, and we will do it with a loop. Now we will be asking for the 5 integers, we will ask for 5 doubles, and we will ask for 5 strings. So first thing, we're gonna do 5 integers. So what I'm going to do, in other words, we have 3 arrays, so we will iterate 3 times. Within the first iteration, we will populate the integers array. In the second iteration, we'll populate the doubles, and in the third, we'll populate the strings. So I'm going to have a nested for loops. The first one, the outside loop, will be basically going through. We'll go 3 times because we have 3 arrays to populate. So our j is less than 3, and we will increase j, of course. And within it, we will do the populating of the individual array. So each of them has 5 elements, so we will loop 5 times, or iterate 5 times. So for integer I equals 0, and I is less than 5. Alright, so over here we will be populating the actual arrays. Now we know that if, or we decide that if j equals 0, that's the first iteration of the outer loop, we will populate the integers. When j equals 1, that's going to be the second iteration, we'll populate the doubles, and on the third iteration, we'll populate the string. So to decide which one we're going to be doing, we can do simple switch statement and pass the j to it, and our cases will be very simple. If the case is 0, in other words, if j is 0, so this is the first, we populate 5 integers, So this is the integer or the integers array that we are populating. So we'll ask for the input, cout, please enter integer, and I'll just call it integer number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so it's gonna be integer number, and it's gonna be I plus 1. It must be I plus 1 because I starts from 0. So I plus 1 will give us 1. So it will say, please enter integer 1. Then it will say integer 2, integer 3, 4, and 5. All right, so that's that. And a space in between. Because we're gonna put it on the same line, we're gonna put the input right after it. In other words, it will say, please enter integer number 1. Then there's gonna be a space, and then the cursor will be blinking right after that, where the user will enter the number. So that's gonna be, and the number is entering, or he is entering, is gonna be the integers in this case, because this is the case 0 and the element I. So the first iteration I is 0, so this is the first element. Then I equals 1, it's gonna be the second element, and so forth until 5 of them are populated. Then it comes over here, j changes to 1, and now we have the case 1, right? And in case 1, we will populate the doubles. So cout, please enter double number, and it's gonna be the same or very similar thing. It's gonna be I plus 1 and a space, and the input. And the input is gonna be the doubles. That's the name of the array I chose. And again, the element is gonna be I, which is gonna start from 0 through 5. So this one is second, we populate 5 doubles. All right, so that's the doubles. And finally, we populate string, which is gonna be case 2. So if j equals 2, then we are populating string. It's gonna be please enter string number, and just like before, it's gonna be I plus 1 with a space and an input. And it's gonna be strings I. Now I'm not doing any validation. I'm not checking if user actually entered integers or doubles. This is not the exercise for going too deep into user validation. That would just kind of distract us from the actual assignment, which is to use the anonymous functions and show you how to use them. All right, so we have that, and now we can create the functions. So yeah, let's do that. So after this one, we will use the mess templates allow us to pass different types of variables or arguments, and in this case it's gonna be different type of arrays. It's gonna be arrays of integers, arrays of doubles, and array of strings. So let's do the GetSmallestValue. So again, we start with the template, since this is anonymous function. It's gonna be actually the same like it was the prototype. Type name t, and t get smallest, not a space, get smallest value, and we are passing the anonymous array of t, and it's a function. So in it, it's very simple. We are passing the array. So I'm going to declare a temporary variable. I call it temporary. Again, I don't know what type of array is being passed. So this is gonna be an anonymous type as well. It's gonna be called temp, and I'll assign it the first index of the array. Now when I'm passing the array, in this case I'm looking for the smallest value, so I'll assume that the first value or the first element in the array is the smallest, and then I will loop and compare that with every other element in the array and assign or reassign the temp value if the value that is being compared to is smaller than the one that is being temporarily held in the variable called temp. So our array or index 0, I'll consider it by default. I'll assume the first element has the lowest value. And now we will simply loop through array and get lowest value. We will actually get the lowest value. We will check if this is indeed the lowest or if there's some other values that are less than this. So we will do 5 iterations because we have 5 elements, we know that. So it's gonna be I equals, in this case, 1, because remember this is 0 is already assigned. We don't have to check whether 0 is less than the element 0 is less than element 0. We know that's not gonna, of course, be true, so we can start from the next element, which is 1. And we will do I is less than 5, I plus plus. And now, basically, if the element we're looping through is less than temp, we have a new lowest element. And now we will assign that element to the variable temp, and then we will loop again and compare the next element to the variable temp, or the value held in variable temp. So if the element I of our array called t is less than temp, then our temp equals ti. We will simply assign that value to our temp, because that is now the new lowest value that we found. And since this is expecting a return type, return something, we are return the temp. That's what we are looking for. At the end of the loop, the temp will hold the lowest value in the array. So that's for the lowest. I'll copy paste this because the finding the highest is gonna be very similar. So this is gonna be get, and this is gonna be largest value. So yeah, okay, we can keep that. The comment stays, except now we assume the first element is the highest, or has the highest value. So we will loop through the array and get the highest value. And if the element we're looping through is more than the temp, we have the new highest value. So this is basically, we're reversing this to greater than, because we are looking for a greater value, not lower value. And that's really all. So now we just have to call these functions somehow, obviously. Over here we know what we are populating, what the arrays are populated with the user input. So now we can simply go and call those functions and output the results. So this comment somehow moved, so all right, this is going over here, up here. Okay, so after the loops, after we have the values in all 3 arrays, we can check for the lowest and highest, and we can do it kind of combined with the output. So this is gonna be output, and it's gonna be simple cout, and we'll say something like lowest integer you entered was, and we will call the get smallest value. That's because that is the one that returns the smallest value. So get smallest value. Now what we are passing, in this case we are passing the integers, so it's the array called integers, because that has the integers from the user input that we entered right here. So that's our first thing. We can do cout just the highest integer you entered was, and this time we will call the get largest value, except did I misspell that with a capital A? I meant to get largest value like that. Get largest value. Yeah, because that would actually give me an error because it's case sensitive. So get largest value, and again we are passing the integers. So after these two functions run, we will have the lowest value because it calls the smallest value and passes the integers, and we will have the largest value of the integers that the user entered. And we do the same thing for the string and for the doubles. So I'll just copy paste it. So it's gonna be the lowest W entered, this is gonna be the highest W entered, this is gonna be the lowest string you entered, and the highest string you entered. Except this time we will call the same function, but now we will pass the doubles array, right? And over here we will pass the strings array. So you can see that we are calling the same function, or the same two functions, and passing integers, doubles, and strings into them. So let's see if this runs. So let's build it. Let's see if that actually passes the build. Slowly but surely, hopefully. All right, build succeeded, so let's run it. So it's asking, please enter integer number 1. So I'll enter, I don't know, 10, and I'll enter 20, 30, and now I enter 50, which is gonna be the highest, and I'll enter 5, which is gonna be the lowest, right? Now it's asking for the double. So I'll enter 10.5, 20.5, 30.5, 50.5, and 5.5. And it's asking for strings, so I can string, I don't know, doesn't matter. Just A, B, C, and then I do, I don't know, X, and D, for example. And now I press enter, and it should give us the output. And it says the lowest integer you entered was 5, which it is. The highest was 50. The lowest double was 5.5, which it was, and highest was 50.5. And the lowest string was A, the highest string was X, which it is by the alphabet. So let's run it again, give it some different values just for the kicks. And I don't know, I can do 100, 200, and 201, and 99, and I don't know, 150. And I will do 100.1, 200 and 200.1, and 99.2 or something, doesn't really matter, 150.8, and string, I'll do ABC, I do BCD, I do AAB, which should be the lowest, I think, and I do ABCD, I'll leave that as the highest, and I'll do BB. So 99 is the lowest integer, 201 is the highest integer, 99.2 lowest double, 200.1 highest double, AAB is the lowest string, and BCD is the highest string. So there you have it. This is the anonymous functions in C++. You create a template, you pass the type name T, and then you, in our case, we are passing the whole arrays. You don't have to pass, obviously. You could pass like single values. You don't, but in our case, we needed the arrays because we are looking for the values, the lowest and highest values in each array. and you just declare the function. The system of how to find, the values remains the same no matter what the type being passed into the function is. That's why we can reuse it. If I needed different functionality, this wouldn't work, because I let's say if integer required different way of finding the lowest integer than the double would, then I wouldn't be able to use it. But the functionality is the same for each of the arrays. It doesn't matter the type, so we can use the same logic and simply pass different types into the functions and get the correct results. So I hope this was helpful. Please like the video if you liked it, leave some comments, share with your friends, and subscribe if you're not yet, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.